How to read a paragraph from the people who brought you How to Read a Sentence. How to read a paragraph. Point 1. Reading a paragraph does not simply mean reading all the sentences. It means understanding the main point of the paragraph. More specifically, it means understanding how the parts of a paragraph make up the main point of the paragraph. It's understanding how the parts relate to the whole. Point 2. You will not typically find the main point of a paragraph in any single place in the paragraph. The main point of the paragraph isn't typically in the paragraph. It's extracted from the paragraph. So there's a paragraph. Again, you won't typically find the main point of a paragraph in the paragraph. Not there, not there, not there. Instead, you have to extract it from the paragraph, from all of the sentences. You abstract it, the main point, across all of the individual sentences. You have to construct it for yourself. It's something you must do and not something you simply find. Now, what is the main point? This is important. The main point is the basic message that the author is seeking to convey, or a main point is the message that you take from the paragraph. The main point is not the topic of a paragraph. The topic is what the paragraph is about. The main point is the paragraph is about World War II. I'm sorry. The topic is what the paragraph is about. If you say the paragraph is about World War II, that's a topic sentence. That's a topic. You're saying what it's about. The main point is what the author is actually saying about what the paragraph is about. The main point of this paragraph is that the World War II occurred because of unresolved issues in World War I. That is a main point. So, if I ask you what a main point of a paragraph is, you don't want to explain what the paragraph is about. Don't say, for example, it's about mindsets. That's wrong. Instead, tell what the author is saying about what the paragraph is about. She's saying mindsets affect how we learn. Do you see the difference? It's about mindsets is the topic. It's what it's about. But the main point is what's actually being conveyed. It has content. It is a statement. It is an assertion. She's saying mindsets affect how we learn. So what's the main point of this paragraph? Here's the first paragraph of the book Mindsets. When I was a young researcher just starting out, something happened that changed my life. I was obsessed with understanding how people cope with failures, and I decided to study it by watching how students grapple with hard problems. So I brought children, one at a time, to a room in their school, made them comfortable, and gave them a series of puzzles to solve. As the students grunted, perspired, and toiled, I watched their strategies and probed what they were thinking and feeling. I expected differences among children and how they coped with the difficulty, but I saw something I never expected. Now, how to read a paragraph. Step 1. Read and translate each sentence. Read each sentence and translate the meaning into your own words. That was covered in How to Read a Sentence. Step 2. Circle all the important concepts in the paragraph. 3. Create a single sentence or statement that brings together all of those central ideas, the one you circled, into a single statement. That will be your main point. So, step 1, read each sentence, translating the meaning into your own words. Let's assume you've already done this, either deliberately, by going sentence by sentence and writing it down, or automatically, because you don't have to do that anymore. Step 2, circle all the important concepts in the paragraph. Well, certainly there's your first important one, the mindsets. When I was a young researcher just starting off, something happened that changed my life. That seems important. I was obsessed with understanding how people cope with failures, so I decided to study it by watching how students grapple with hard problems. So I brought children in one at a time to a room in their school. I made them comfortable, and I gave them a series of puzzles to solve. The first ones were easy, but the next ones were hard. As the students grunted, perspired, and toiled, I watched their strategies and probed what they were thinking. I expected differences in how they cope with difficulty, but I saw something I never expected. Those are all the important concepts. Now, step 3. Create a single sentence or statement that brings together all of the central ideas into a single statement. And there's one right there. She watched kids struggling with difficult problems to see how they cope with failure and found something she never expected. That's the main point. Now, I added something further. It must have something to do with mindsets. I inferred that from this. How did I infer it? Well, there's the mindsets. There's the title right there. There's your main point, and this main point abstracts across all of the important concepts in the paragraph. Note the main point isn't anywhere in the paragraph. You can't find it in any one place. You have to create it by abstracting across all of the sentence, or at least all the important parts of the sentence. Let me show you how that happened. There's the paragraph, and there's all of the important concepts that we've circled. Note how, let's show you how each of these concepts is contained in this short, pithy main point statement. So let's start. Something changed her life. Well, there it is. She never expected. She watched kids struggling with difficult problems to see how they cope with failure and found something she never expected. That's what changed her life. How do they cope with failures? It's right there. How she studied the children. Well, she watched them. The students were grappling with hard problems. There it is, difficult problems. Puzzles to solve. They were difficult problems, were the puzzles themselves. Some of the puzzles were fairly easy and some were very hard. Both of them are covered with the idea of difficult. As the students grunted, perspired, and toiled, well, that's struggling. She watched their strategies and probed what they were thinking and feeling. Well, she watched how they coped with failure. She expected differences among the children. Well, there's multiple kids there, but there was something she never expected. And it must have something to do with, well, mindsets. All of these ideas are in this one statement. You do this, you read this thing, you read the paragraph, you extract this idea, you will truly understand it. It's very different than simply running through, reading each sentence independently, and moving on. Again, it's hermeneutic. We stop, we reflect upon it, and we extract something that is the sense of the whole. Here's another example. This is from Lincoln's Gettysburg Address. But in a large sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot concentrate, we cannot hollow this ground. The brave men living and dead who struggled here have consecrated it far above our poor power to add or detract. The world will little note nor long remember what we say here, but it can never forget what they did here. It is for us, the living, rather to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they fought for here, and have thus so nobly advanced. It is rather for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that from those honored dead we take increased devotion to the cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we were highly resolved that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. Now, those are Lincoln's words in the Gettysburg Address. Very, very famous. But as we read through it, it's not simple, is it? There's an awful lot there. If we simply read through it once, we wouldn't get it. If we read through it, we have to read through it, and we have to look at each sentence and understand each sentence and how they make up the whole. Let's see if we can get a main point. So, step 1, read the sentence, translating the meaning into your own words, each sentence. Let's assume that's been done. Then, circle important concepts and phrases. Well, in a large sense, we cannot dedicate, we cannot consecrate, we cannot hollow, all the same thing, hollow this ground. The brave men, living and dead, struggled here, have consecrated it to themselves. We can never forget what they did, But there's unfinished work. What is that unfinished work? That unfinished work is for us, not for the dead. We're going to honor the dead. How can we honor the dead? We honor the dead and make sure that they have not died in vain by making sure that we advance the cause of the birth of a new nation, or the rebirth of the nation, the new birth of freedom. That government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth. This was the speech he made at Gettysburg, with the idea that we need government of the people, for the people, and by the people, that it will not perish from the earth, is the idea that if the Civil War were lost, well, the government of the people, by the people, and for the people would perish. Consider what all of these phrases mean together, and bring them together into a single integrated whole that summarizes all of these ideas in a single statement. It's not easy, but here's one. The nation must complete the unfinished work of preserving government by, and for the people, so the men who died in Gettysburg will not have done so in vain. All of that, all that lovely language, gets reduced to this main point. If that was hard, that is easier. But that easier main point is hard won. It's hard won by putting all these together. A final example, still more difficult. This is from Gordon Allport's commentary on Viktor Frankl's wonderful book, Man's Search for Meaning. Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, is an account of how Frankl, the author, found meaning in life while experiencing the horrors of a Nazi concentration camp. It's one of the books we read in our classes, perhaps in this one. Let's read it. Again, you'll find it difficult, but we're going to understand it. But these moments of comfort do not establish the will to live unless they help the prisoner make a larger sense out of his apparently senseless suffering. Frankl is talking about prisoners in a concentration camp who were treated horribly, killed at whim, worked until they were fatigued, emaciated, beaten. It is here that we encounter the central theme of existentialism. To live is to suffer. To survive is to find meaning in the suffering. If there's a purpose in life at all, there must also be a purpose in suffering and in dying. But no man can tell another what his purpose is. Each must find out for himself and must accept responsibility that his answer prescribes. If he succeeds, he will continue to grow in spite of all indignities. Frankl is fond of quoting Nietzsche. He who has a why to live can bear with almost any how. There's a lot there. So how do you read this paragraph? 1. Read each sentence, translating the meaning into your own words, checking it against the original. That takes time. Let's assume it's been done. 2. Circle important concepts and phrases. He's talking about the will to live. He's talking about the need to make sense out of senseless suffering. Talking about the goal of life is to survive and find meaning in the suffering through purpose. Each man must find for himself and accept responsibility for finding that purpose. And he who has a why to live can bear with almost any how. What does that basically mean? Is that a person who has a purpose. If you have a purpose, you can bear almost any problem, any hardship. Consider what these mean all together and bring them together into a main thesis. And here's one. A person who has a purpose to live can endure almost any circumstances. Each person must take responsibility for finding such a purpose, which is what gives life meaning, and which gives meaning to life and its suffering. Again, difficult paragraph. Break it down. To look at each sentence, understand it as best as you can, circle the important ideas, and then try to put them together. If you can put them together, this is not as complex as this, but it gets at all the ideas. You understand that, you understand the main point. You'll never forget it. So, how to read a paragraph? Find the main point by abstracting across the various sentences that make up the paragraph.